Hey guys, what is up? AwesomeTheSauce here. Hope you guys are having a great day and welcome to a video that's honestly super, I'm delayed. I should have made a video on this a long time ago. Today we're going to be talking about this image. Now this image actually came out a very long time ago actually. I think it's almost been a month since this came out. But I never really talked about what this might mean, and I kind of wanted to wait until we got more information about it, but honestly, it looks like we won't really know enough about this specific image until Test Realm drops. But what is this image? A lot of people, and there's many reasons to believe this, which we will go over in this video. A lot of people believe that this is going to be the new symbol for the balance bubble, so that it doesn't just look like power play. And also, the other two bubbles are going to be the life and death damage bubble. Now I wanted to talk about this specific change because I believe that bubbles are one of the biggest reasons why schools are so unequal in PvP right now. You might notice this if you just go into PvP. Death Wizards, they tend to blade a lot into a big hit, and Life Wizards, they tend to play very defensively. So you might notice, you might see a lot of people with very high resist that play as Life, and they just Wings of Fate spam until the timer runs out. They might do a variation of that where they just put on a Guiding Light and keep Dryading. They might use a free item cards, you know, like there's a lot of ways in which Life is very forced to play defensively, and in many ways, Death is limited also by not having a bubble. The truth is, both Life and Death do actually have, they both have two bubbles actually. They're both just not competitive in PvP. The first type of bubble is a healing bubble. Now, these bubbles can be very good, but the problem is, let's say that you get into a dedicated bubble war, right? Let's say that you use a sanctuary against someone who has a 2-pip bubble, like Myth with Time of Legend or Fire with Wildfire. Every sanctuary you cast, they can use another bubble of their own, and they'll gain a pip on you. You will lose pips with Sanctuary, and with Doom, unless your opponent heals, it's a very useless bubble. As far as hidden bubbles go, brown spiders are very rare, and even when you do have them, you have to be very careful about how you use them. Let's say that you have a blade, immediately this becomes a worse move, because why would you use a blade on a 215 damage hit with like 3 to 4 pips when you could use it on a Luminous or a Hungry? Brown spiders and red ghost are very good in certain situations. If your opponent has a bubble up and they happen to shield, then yes, this can be a very good move. But schools that blade stack like Death, or even schools that just, you know, don't have the ability to pack that many brown spiders because of rarity, you'll start to see a really big problem where your opponent can just put up one quick bubble and they'll have that bubble guaranteed for the entire game. I think this problem is especially true for Doom and Gloom because, again, people argue, like, why don't you just pack 6 Doom and Glooms and call it a day? The thing is, it's not just the fact that Doom and Gloom takes away someone else's bubble, it just doesn't do anything for the Death Wizard. And as we mentioned earlier, Red Ghost, if you're blading, which basically every Death Wizard has to do to make up for not having a bubble, then Red Ghost doesn't work because you have to hit, and hitting wastes all of your blade. So Death and Life are put into this really weird scenario where they automatically lose the bubble war just as soon as they go against someone who has a bubble, which is any of the other 5 schools. And they're also forced into these weird niche strategies where they either have to blade sporadically or they have to play super defensively for timer. It's one of the main reasons why Death and Life are both very underwhelming schools in PvP currently. So basically, this image gives us hope that there might actually be change coming to that. But there's a lot to talk about, right? We don't actually know what these bubbles are. And I was talking about this on stream, and I thought I would make a video about this. I feel like these don't even have to be damage bubbles in order for them to actually change the game. Now, why might a 2-pip damage bubble for Life and Death not be the greatest idea? It's simply just a matter of school identity. You want to feel like you're playing a different school when you're on a Life or when you're on a Death. And currently, it does feel different, but not for the right reasons, right? It feels different because you have a lack of utility. I just think it would be really cool if, instead of just pure damage, it should still be 2 pips so you can effectively fight a bubble war with someone, but it should also be something that means something for the school that you're on. They didn't really do this with the balance bubble, so chances are they're not going to do this with Life and Death. I've always thought that the life bubble should just be a little bit of damage and also a little bit of healing. So that means you don't go super offensive with like a 25% bubble, but you also keep the element of Sanctuary that retain school identity for life without making it super offensive. As long as it's a 2-pip bubble, I'm sure it'll be very, very good. Honestly, life isn't as bad as death in that respect, at least. For death, I really think that they would be missing out on a great opportunity if they don't make the bubble something related to drain. Now, if you don't know exactly what drains are when it comes to PvP in general, it's because it's very rarely used. The only real drain that I see used a lot is Scion. That's because if you end up below 33%, this becomes a massive hit. But currently, there is no way to interact with the actual draining that happens. And here's the thing, there's evidence to suggest that King's Isle does want to experiment with that. If you look at the ghoul spell elements, right, this is a really cool concept. I mean, obviously with the way Solar Surge is and how it's only 100 enchant on 2-pip spells, this isn't really a game changer anymore. But, you know, the ghoul spell elements, there are 2 paths. One of them just raises the damage, but the other one raises the percent drain. What does that mean? That means that if you actually buff this ghoul up a lot, you can actually get a very, very nice heal. I think it would be really cool if they put out a bubble that, yes, raise the damage a little bit, sure, maybe 10, 15%, but whatever the extra remaining percent is out of that 25% that a bubble normally is, I think they should boost that to drain so that you're incentivized to actually use the spell that fits your school. Honestly, if this is such a divisive concept, they could even add spellman paths to these bubbles so you can make it either just a pure damage bubble or a drain bubble or something in between. I just think there's a lot of ideas there that I really hope they don't just go out of their way just to give everyone a 25 bubble. And I know this seems like, wow, this is a controversial opinion. It kind of is. The reason why a 25 bubble, especially for death and life, won't really change much is because TC bubbles still exist. If you were to give everyone a 25 bubble and removed all TC bubbles, then I would understand adding that. Then you're basically saying, you know what, bubbles, they're not a school identity thing. We're just gonna give everyone equal access to bubbles. Then it makes sense. Right now, there's a huge problem where if you have a main deck version of a bubble, but you don't have a side deck version of a bubble, you will probably lose the bubble war very easily. It's a simple numbers game. Let's look at the balance bubble, right? This was a very nice change for balance, don't get me wrong, but I would argue that it was not a game changer at all, mainly because even though you can pack 6 main deck bubbles, you cannot pack any inside deck. This spell does not exist in TC form. The only reason we don't really notice that much is because Gaze is still a hidden bubble for a Shad, and it can be very, very useful. So this kind of makes up for the fact that there is no TC bubble. The reason, again, that a hidden bubble works for balance is because it's not a blade stacking school. The second you take a blade stacking school like Death and even Life, let's say they want to play offensive with blades or even traps, right, in the case of the Life Fuel strat. The second you add all of that, a hidden bubble is just not as good as it is for balance. So I would argue that if they simply just add a 25 bubble, they will still be losing bubble wars left, right, and center against schools that can put a bunch of side deck TCs that are bubble. While hit and bubble TCs remain rare for balance, death, and life, for the other 5 schools, it is as simple as going to the Arcanum and just buying a bunch of them and stacking them until you just win the war, right? You'll win the bubble war. If you want to try to buy the balance one, it's still a power play. I guess what I'm saying is, if you want to make every school the same, then you should standardize across TCs as well. But if this isn't just an effort to make every school the same, then maybe the bubble should actually have something to do with the school identity that life and death are. There are rumors that suggest that maybe TC bubbles are not going to be a thing in PvP anymore, as in they're going to be removed, and that bubbles are going to be a part of the audit as well. I have no idea how that's going to affect things. All I do know is that schools with the natural advantage of just packing a bunch of TC bubbles and just winning because the other school that they're going against doesn't have them, if you're talking about those schools specifically, they might actually get a big nerf. And Ice is a prominent member of that list, but also Mint. I don't know, and I guess as a final thing, you know, I do think that I'm scared about bubbles in general, because I feel like if things get too similar, we'll have the same problem that we've had recently with damage auras and Wiz. Everybody has a damage aura, and the second they get it, especially with spell audits and everything making the schools a lot more equal, the second someone gets that one slight advantage in an even playing field, that's when they get the win. And I feel like if everyone has the same bubble, the second you have a slight advantage like having TC bubbles, you'll automatically win. I don't know. I wonder if they're just going to take the very simple route, or if they're going to try to be creative with this and hopefully not mess up the game more. It's definitely a hard thing to do. You can be creative, but you also do run the risk of unbalancing PvP. I'd love to hear y'all's opinions, man. Drop a like if you enjoyed, leave us up if you're new, drop a comment letting me know your opinion. There's tons of links in the description as well. Check out the Patreon, Patreon, the Twitch, the Twitter, everything in the description. As always, if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong, so stay awesome. And yeah, y'all.